Joining us, welcome on board. We are broadcasting live from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, and this is Morning at NTV. We are in the Kickstarter segment, implications of the AGOA trade and everything that is going to happen or might not happen with regard to the new threats as described by the Minister for ICT, Dr. Chris Baryomusi from Washington. Just a preamble before I introduce my guests who will be helping us with a perspective that should embolden our understanding of the state of affairs between Kampala and Washington for now. The U.S. Trade Representative's Office announced the decision to delist Uganda from AGOA on November the 1st, 2023, saying that Uganda has failed to make sufficient progress on meeting eligibility requirements, including protecting intellectual property rights and eliminating child labor, that's a human rights issue, criteria related to various violations. Niger and Gabon are also on the list of the impending expulsion as a result of a failure to establish continued progress towards the protection of political pluralism and the rule of law. Uganda exported goods worth $174 million to the United States last year, while Gabon and Niger recorded exports totaling to 220 million and 773 million respectively in the same period. There's a lot for other countries, but that is now in their court to deal with. We also have to deal with our own issues here. Joining me to help us understand what is at stake, what it means for the economy, is Angelo Izama, a board member at Uganda Investment Authority. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us too. Shadow Cabinet Foreign Minister, Honorable Wadam Nkunyinji. My apologies for the mispronunciation of that. And also a front seater in the National Unity Platform opposition political party. Thank you for joining us. We also have with us seasoned commentator, Uganda People's Congress stalwart, Joseph Otieno. Thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure to be here.
We are glad to have a board member of the Uganda Investment Authority with us. AGOA is business all through. Without wasting a lot of time and understanding what will happen after this, let's first understand what is AGOA for the uninitiated. What I know is that it's been on for the last 2 decades. 2 decades ago, I was still teething in journalism. So,
oh, you are? Well, I remember when it was launched.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember when it was launched. It just shows that Joseph was telling me how long we have been in the in this game.
Yes.
You know. But African Growth and Opportunities Act was one of those innovative U.S. economic foreign policy programs. As you said, it's about 2 decades old. A good friend of mine, Hashim Mlangwa, I remember straight out of campus, was employed in the AGOA office, was right here by where NSSF is. Okay. They had a very nice little setup there. In the initial years, when I was covering it as a journalist, AGOA was very progressive. There was a long list of products that would come to the US tariff-free, and it was intended to open the door for export for products here, improve the standards of those products for the U.S. market. In the initial years, actually, the hope was that agricultural produce, particularly where Uganda had an advantage, would benefit from investments such that the high standards of the United States market would have a ripple effect here on the quality of on production of agricultural goods and services. So that program, I think, if we had participated in such the robust way, would have had a threshold. You would have become the trajectory would be you would grow your domestic industry supplying those AGOA listed products up to a point, and then if you become like a player like South Africa, you'd be wind of it. But the program, the version that we have here in Uganda has been, well, you could call it sluggish. I spoke to people who were in AGOA like decades ago and 2 decades ago, and they're like, this program really never took off. There's another one called Everything But Arms, which is the one of the European Union. But as the chairperson of the board that I sit on, Maurice Nrokakamba, said the other week when the US put out before this bombshell of President Biden, they put out an advisory about doing business in Uganda. Initially they put out a statement saying, here's a business advisory.
That's right.
Then they put out another one about 2 weeks ago, essentially saying, you do business at your own risk with Uganda. And then now there is the delisting of Uganda together with Gabon and Niger. The impression I get is that they are not very happy with Uganda. That relationship is not in a good place right now. But our view is, first of all, it's of course regrettable that you get delisted from AGOA. There are small companies that are doing business with the US.
That's right.
Even if the numbers are not big. Our view is that hopefully that relationship can be restored. Access for Ugandan companies, producers, innovators to any market in the world is obviously the kind of priority that we would like to put before the country.
All right, let's just stay with you, Angelo Izama, and use your good offices to hammer this out. Exports to the United States include coffee, leather products, bags, shoes, shea butter, crafts, dairy products, casein, fish, vanilla, dried fruits, cocoa, essential oils, natural extracts, spices, and some products in floriculture. And you've just spoken about the fact that there are small businesses that might get affected heavily. But within the posture that is Uganda's investment landscape right now, any ripples that we should expect, or like you said, since it never really took off, it is not something that might affect the workings of the economy significantly?
No, take a small business like Endiro Coffee that has got 2 branches in the United States. Or there's one of our investors, a domestic investor that supplies vacuum sealed bananas. Even if they're exporting $3-4 million a year, that income is important. As a small economy, we take whatever we can get. So I can give you a profile of export markets. Some of them are concentrated markets, say China, the European Union, and particularly regional markets here where we get where Uganda's agricultural produce is destined. But the impact, I wouldn't want it for you to look at it at a macro level. Okay. Yeah, at a micro level, like we support the growth of domestic businesses. These businesses are defined basically. The threshold is like $50,000. That's the valuation of your business, and that makes the majority. In any case, that is the bottom foundation of the entire economy. Anytime doors are locked in any market, be it the United States of America, or be it Kenya right here, where we had problems with the sale of eggs and milk, that has an impact, and that impact cannot be ignored. My view really is that to the extent possible, these geopolitical factors that may have led to this decision aside, for the investment and business community, we would first of all like to say that any U.S. business investor is welcome, like any other investor in the world. Anytime. Yeah, and we are happy to support them in putting their businesses here. We won't turn away anyone. Okay, we are happy to support them, and we're also happy for efforts that are undertaken to restore such relationships as would advance Uganda's market interests.
Okay, Honorable Mwada Nkonyinji, your shadow foreign affairs minister, and listening to Angelo Izama, you realize that the issuance of a business advisory, pretty much this followed that particular development. Within the workings of foreign affairs or relations between countries, one would say Uganda saw this coming, especially after the enactment of a very controversial piece of legislation that no one has actually veiled their statements as one of the reasons as to why we were being delisted. How is the foreign relations landscape like? Are we at the point where things get this bad and any slight spat, be it business, be it social, cultural issues, are going to take us down the drain?
Thank you. Principally, if someone tells you that Uganda loses nothing with the latest developments, that would be a self-seeker. In the global setup, we must appreciate the positioning of the United States. If you look at just 2021 in terms of trade volumes, Uganda exported approximately $70 million US. And the AGOA Act is very specific and deliberate from inception, that it is rooted on the commitment of every member country. And those member countries were selected from sub-Saharan Africa, majorly. It's a principle that you must commit to observe human rights, to observe and protect the rule of law, good governance, among others. The list is quite bigger. Now, coming to terms with the recent developments, I think partly Uganda is misguided in terms of foreign relations. As a shadow minister, I would comfortably tell you that for now 2 years we have been offering checks and on our foreign affairs ministry. But as we speak now, Uganda lacks an elaborate and codified foreign policy. Now you are seeing a lot of arguments. Each agency, each entity of Uganda will make a different argument. But these are matters governed by foreign relations. The AGOA Act was not dispensable. It is actually, it includes the U.S. foreign policy values. And it is well guided by U.S. foreign policy. And so it was enshrined on mutual relations, on commitment of the countries, the selected countries, to observe and respect the same. And this would actually form part of our foreign policy, but as well also our internal policy mechanisms. Now, when you see a lot of, I had the submission of my brother from Investment Authority. I wanted to question myself now, how are they appointed as board members? Isn't it purely a branch of NRM, or do they actually represent investment in this country? Because we must have a honest discussion, much as at the end, he tried to outline some of the benefits, and it would be loss for our country, especially when we lose our participation in AGOA. But I want to quickly say that Uganda benefits a lot in participating in AGOA, and we are going to lose a lot by the suspension. Principally, the suspension is not a blanket suspension. It is very deliberate. They are telling Uganda, please improve on A, B, C, and D if you are to continue enjoying the mutual relations. But as well, I was trying to draw you back that when we insisted that our Foreign Affairs Ministry provide and avails a codified foreign policy for Uganda, that would outline our participation not only in terms of diplomacy, but also our international engagements, including such participation in such arrangements. The Minister of Foreign Affairs promised that to Parliament that by June they would come up with a codified policy. But a few weeks ago, before we boycotted the House, I had equally raised it when we were trying to examine the brought delegation to UN, to UN General Assembly. Part of the issues I outlined when I was raising that aspect on the floor of Parliament was a demand that we must have and receive a codified foreign policy so that Uganda can be guided, including all other user departments in terms of governance in this country. But as we speak, Uganda is being accused, and rightly accused, of failure to protect and observe human rights, political pluralism. As we speak now, because as I entered, I'm not smart that I'm going to Parliament. I'm smart that from here I'm going to for the grand opening of NUP party offices at Kavule. but we hear a lot of rumors from other DCs and from security sources that I can't even go back. I'm being deliberate because part of the requirement of participation in AGOA was to allow political pluralism in our countries. It is part of the requirement. So I'm right on topic that if we cannot freely even open party offices, where is the political pluralism? And we are a political party registered under the Political Parties and Organizations Act. So in terms of our Uganda-US relations, we are monitored and followed up in terms of our accuracy in respecting human rights, democratic governance, political pluralism, among others. So Uganda is performing poorly, and is partly the reason for our suspension. We are going to lose much. That's why I told you, just by 2021, Uganda's trade volume in terms of with the US was at approximately $80 million US. You cannot underestimate that. And two, when you look at our export products, probably Uganda exports largely agricultural products, and the AGOA Act covers agricultural products. The AGOA Act is telling you that look here, you can now export into US markets duty-free. Now, if even individual traders in this country, Uganda, if you are to give them duty-free imports, they will be happy and they will make a lot of profits. What about enjoying a US market? It's a good deal for Uganda if we are actually to be considered. But as well, we must also be alive to the fact that what America is insisting on, that Uganda must respect political pluralism, human rights, among others, is protective in terms of Ugandans. We gain nothing and we don't gain much by earning a lot of money amid this corruption. Part of the requirement of AGOA participation is you must show efforts of curbing corruption. But we are seeing now in Uganda the corrupt going free. I think US has a point that actually what you see and what is visible on the ground, there's rampant corruption, there's rampant abuse of political pluralism, there's rampant abuse of the rule of law, there's impunity by state actors. I want to assume that investment authority is not part, but as well it is protective in terms of our people, that as we earn from AGOA, as we earn from AGOA, if the Ugandans must be alive and living. So some of the terms of participation in AGOA is to protect the rights of citizens of this country. Actually, the protective terms are not protecting Americans, they are protecting Ugandans. And our participation in AGOA, we benefit economically, there's duty-free export and trade, there's good trade volumes, and mind you, Uganda exports largely coffee, cocoa.
I mentioned those products.
So many of these products.
Fruits, and essential oils, and natural extracts.
So the benefits are enormous, but as well, it benefits who? It must benefit individuals and Ugandans who are alive. Right. So it must be protected. So the insistence of US is to protect the citizens of this country, and that's why we're also questioning the government of Uganda. Why are they silent, especially Foreign Affairs Ministry? They have failed to codify a properly guided foreign policy, and that's why you see even our participation in terms of international fora, not only in AGOA, even the recent UN saga. So we have a lot of imbalance and a lot of inconsistency, and I think Uganda is to lose, but as well the insistence of US is to protect us as people. We
shall later be delving into Uganda's foreign policy and whether it is deliberate and one that can be executed by all agencies and diplomats, or we shall be accustomed to a case of uncoordinated troop movements. Joseph Otieno, you've heard the two gentlemen speak.
Yeah, do you still want me to hear? Have I got anything useful to add?
You have a lot to add, and of course the perspective is important. But I want you to, listening to Honorable Mwada Nkunyinji, you understand the politics here is pretty deep, and Washington perhaps is being accused of using some scapegoats here and there to move what is no doubt a very political issue. By and large, let's stay with the business first angle.
But we must be alive to the fact.
We are alive to all facts.
We must be alive to the fact that the AGOA Act has preconditions, and some of them are political.
You've made those points. So you've made them very clearly.
From the AGOA Act.
All right, let's listen to Joseph Otieno. What's your take on all this? I don't want to pin you on something specific for now.
Yeah, possibly not. You're absolutely right that to allow me to embed it broadly. This is a political move, and it is political for Uganda, political for the US. And as my two colleagues, both may be coming from various strands, but different strands, but you know, combine all of it together, basically that's the reality of Uganda. I think AGOA had fairly given a considered attempt from a fairly business perspective, you know, an analytical and from the background of journalistic perspective for which he is generally. But of course, my good friend from NUP has got every right and reason to present it as it were. I have a relative privilege that when AGOA was being initiated, I was mature enough, and there was a leader of the then very lone opposition political party, Uganda People's Congress, and in fact, I was then head of the External Bureau of Uganda People's Congress in UK, actively campaigning, and I saw this come. I must say that while this is something that is broadly beyond Uganda, at the inception generally, Clinton at the time was very desperately trying to push for a new Africa-US relations, and to their credit, even attempted to bring new languages of suggesting that we're going to work around as partners and as friends, and so to do so, we needed to make sure that US was open for business and that Africa was enabled. But that said, these were sweeteners to then Mr. Museveni and the Republic of Uganda. And whereas this is something which is fundamentally of net benefit to the citizens of Uganda across regardless of our political opinions. It also happens to be the case that when this was being initiated, you know, those of us from the political opposition must remember that in the year 2000 or thereabout, when this thing was being initiated, you know, human rights abuse in this country was far worse than where it is at the moment. I'm not saying it's any better, you know, in context, it was far worse because political parties were banned in 2000. I was then in exile. You know, most of northern Uganda was in concentration camps. But then the U.S. presidents, you know, were free to come and walk in the streets of Kampala and go back and praise the Republic of Uganda as a new heaven. You know, so it's both it's hypocritical from both sides. Where exactly are we at the moment? I think Angelo is absolutely right that this was a genuine opportunity for Ugandans, that the U.S. opened up an opportunity then for ordinary Ugandan business and industry. And the question should be, why is it that we're not able to benefit as much as ideally we should have? Because I don't really think that I am comfortable comparing Uganda with Gabon, comparing Uganda with Niger, comparing Uganda with Mali in some of these other issues, which unfortunately we are. The Uganda that we left, the Uganda that Uganda People's Congress left, was a Uganda in which, when it came to, you know, competitiveness, you know, in trade, global trade, we were excellent. You can tell that my suit is rather smart, and I just want to make sure that I'm not left on this. But my suit is from the Marks and Spencers of UK, and including the red UPC tie. But guess what? Uganda exported these garments to Marks and Spencers in the UK and to the top markets in the US in the 60s, and I think actually going towards the early 70s until Amin came in. Meaning that the African textile mill and then the Nigels of this world were able to export in the absence of AGOA, and we did so successfully. So to the extent that AGOA came and gave us these opportunities of tax rebates, if you want to present it like that, you know, and we still were not able to make the best use of it, is an indictment of this regime. So for me, less about foreign policies, but more about structural systems domestically. What happened to our internal mechanisms to address, because one of the things that the US is talking about is our inability to up, and I think again, Angel, to be fair, was raising these things, to up the game in terms of quality of our products. Most importantly, though, this AGOA base was at a coffee marketing board in a coffee plant in industrial area, and I remember writing a big critique on this, that the coffee plant that UPC built in the 60s, that was the second most complex in the world, following one that was in Brazil. And that coffee was then our top export at the time. We managed to kill this at Bugolobi, and use it as a base for AGOA. So even at the inception, simply to have an initiative to say that, look, this is something which is new. Let's go to an industrial park, perhaps in Namamvi, but Namamvi is a forest. Maybe let's take it to some dry land somewhere, and open up a site, a base for which we have to make the best use of AGOA. Even at that inception, it wasn't. So basically, we killed one major plant to use one which I'm told Museveni was used to say that, leave my girls alone, means AGOA girls. One of the things that has been said here is the question of not only about abuse of human rights, but this thing about the use of child labor. We are not talking about some of these other things. It's extremely important that as of now, as the warnings were beginning to come, that we came back. And this conversation is a conversation that should really be held by the ministers and key policy makers in this country, and simply say what went wrong to do when we're doing trajectory of this. Anyway, it is the case that at the end of it, it's a political decision that has been made, and it's got to be nothing to do with basically our structural failure to reach where we are, but maybe a strong relations between the US and Uganda. As I said, at the end of the day, the guys who are going to lose are going to be ordinary citizens, and I think the ordinary guys who are going to try, including the likes of Ndiru, of course not Ndiru Coffee, but those other ones who are possibly far worse than Ndiru and who are not really on the headline. All
right, gentlemen, there's a lot that we have to chew on this particular topic. You speak about the fact that it is political and very little on any other aspect. We now understand that we have the State Foreign Minister, Okello Oryem, who will be speaking to us shortly. But I want to return to the gentleman from Uganda Investment Authority. Right now, we are on the precipice of either capitalizing on advantages or completely holding on to something that is burning us. You
have to be much more clear. Which precipice? Are we standing at the edge?
Looking at the fact that Uganda's history when it comes to what the gentleman talked about, a violation of human rights, including the confined spaces for political actors, these things have been on. They've been happening now and again. The fact that the United States, or Washington for that matter, never acted on these, and then all of a sudden right now feels like it's time to act. It takes us back to the fact that the bill, the legislation, is what is putting us in a tight spot. Someone was asking me a question the other day. How important is homosexuality to the Western world, to the extent that anybody that touches this particular issue is seen as
a leopard thing,
destabilizing so much? Human rights abuses go on, economies are run down by leaders, and the world does nothing. But all of a sudden, homosexuality. What is in homosexuality for the West? Those are two questions.
I don't know which how you but let me deal with the more. Look, I am also a student of foreign policy, and this year I have read maybe 15 to 20 books on the Cold War. And Cold War history is actually a good primer to understanding global relations.
Okay.
Foreign relations are essentially about power and interests. And okay, this is not my purview, and this is for the politicians here. But the impression I get, going back, maybe 15, 20 years ago, when I was a producer for a program like this one here, Andrew Mwenda, who I now understand is like an establishment voice, used to argue about the hypocrisy that Joseph was talking about, that AGOA and general US aid was flowing into countries like Uganda, despite the fact that their human rights record was questionable. And at the time, as a journalist, I was covering the war in the north, the crisis in Karamoja, Uganda in the DRC. So the regional environment was radically worse, I think, you know, if you think about it like that. And the argument that was made at the time was that U.S. foreign policy interests were essentially about trying to secure this region by anchoring their regional security around Uganda's influence. And that these were more important to the policymakers in Washington than Uganda's human rights record. Of course, now it is flipped. But look, I stay away from words like precipice. The nature of foreign relations is that they can improve and they can degrade. Okay, and that as a country, like I said, you know, we should define our ambitions by our long-term interests. Over the last 20 years, there have been moments in the relationship between the United States and Uganda and this region that were uplifting. There are moments when they are not. Currently, in this current environment of great power competition, where the U.S. is confronting its peer competitors in the form of China and Russia, I can understand that there's need to apply some leverage to countries like Uganda. The net effect of this is not for me and others who are really focused on, you know, growing value to discuss. But this is a dynamic environment you can't get away from. Look, I also sit on the board of Chapter 4 Uganda, which is a legal charity.
That's right.
Okay, and my colleagues there, particularly Nicholas Opio, who incidentally also represents some opposition politicians when they're in trouble. The view that has been taken, I think, is that Uganda's constitution, particularly Chapter 4 of that constitution, is consistent with, first of all, it says that there won't be any discrimination on the basis of religion, race, or sex. Okay, and that's what the constitution says. Any attempt to, you know, impose leverage externally, you know, on Uganda's own discussion about this nature of rights and how they're evolving, I think is where there's a challenge. That these matters have become like part of the basket of issues that are in the geopolitical sphere, and then that they're being used as leverage in these games. But that said, I feel that the environment in the country is such that these matters are being debated every day. Ugandans will sort themselves out, and this regional picture, whether their relations with great powers improve or degrade, in the long term, okay, we're here for a very, very, very long time. Okay, these things will improve, and the picture may be different even 5 years from now.
All right, thank you very much, Angelo Nzema. For now, it's top of the hour. Let's go for a short break. When we return, this conversation will continue, and perhaps we shall look at a lot more deeper aspects. But the politics of the day is pretty much important. It's also something I cannot completely stay away from. Perhaps we shall dig into it when we return. Do stay with us. We'll be right back. Thank you for staying with us, and of course you are watching Morning at NTV. It's the Kickstarter. We are discussing the threat, according to the government, by Washington, of course the one that came in delisting Uganda from the AGOA initiative. That is of course an opportunity for Ugandan businesses and the government to export products into the United States duty-free. Those are the advantages that some people say Uganda has been unable to maximize. But the political endgame is lingering large on this issue. Let's now be joined by the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Okello Oryem, who is with our very own Stephen Mbide. A very good morning, Stephen.
Yes, good morning to you, Chris, and his State for International Relations, Ladit Henry Okello Oryem. Kopango honorable.
Kope apoyo.
Very much. Now, let's go into the gist of the subject matter today. My I'm guessing that maybe government right now, Minister of Trade, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Justice and Constitutional Affairs, are already in a panic mode after the declaration of the U.S. president.
We are not panicking. We're stable and firm and not shaken by the recent announcement by the United States government of withdrawing Uganda from AGOA. And we are also prepared for future announcements that might come that might be negative to us. We don't only prepare for what has passed, but we are prepared for what comes in the future.
But this is a market that you, for the last 2 decades, has been so beneficial for Uganda. This is a market that you wouldn't want to lose.
Fortunately, or unfortunately, it's only about no more than $10 million. No more than $10 million. So, if it was like in the case of South Africa, where it's $251 million, then we would panic. But you're talking about $10 million. We have solutions to that. We are going to ask our producers of coffee, we're going to ask our producers of tea and other products to step up and fill that gap. We are going to increase and improve on our other mineral resources in making sure that there are no loopholes and they are more productive, and then we'll more than cover the small gap that the Americans are pulling. So we're not panicking.
I know
it is unfortunate, but we're not panicking. In fact, it might even be a good thing for us. It's a wake-up call that we better improve on other sectors and don't rely on trading with the United States of America, but improve in other sectors that will allow us to be independent of being threatened or being intimidated each time we want to do our things internally as Uganda, an independent country.
I know when one door closes, another opens, but you don't want to make friends and then lose them the following day. What if today is the US and tomorrow is either Russia or China, you wouldn't want to go for like this if you're trying to develop the economy?
We're used to Americans' behavior. This is not the first time America is doing this. We see how they do to other countries. They're not special. America doesn't see Uganda as special, and America doesn't see any country as special. Even the European countries, they don't see them as specials. Americans have friends of convenience to them. Every so-called friend of theirs, a friend of convenience to project and ensure that their interest is protected. That's the #1 policy of America. So there is no speciality that America thinks Uganda is so a special country to them. No. America are with us simply to protect their interests. No problem. We accept them as friends. After this, we'll continue being friends. It will not be the end of the world. The ambassador is here. We'll continue being friends. But internally, to us, this is a wake-up call. A wake-up call that we better put up our socks, be more efficient, be more prudent, seek alternative ways of getting foreign money to fill these gaps, and be prepared in future that they might come back with other measures, but we'll be prepared that we have now improved in other sectors to make sure we're independent of threats of sanctions and such threats.
You know, you guys, when you were discussing this AGOA deal, it was benchmarked on good governance, access to markets in Africa, but also issues of improving the economy. But this call is just working on your human rights record.
But America is not the #1 human rights. They have the #1. It's not #1 in respecting human rights.
You know, observance of human rights is also one of the tenets of good governance.
It is, but who said America is #1 in issue of human rights? They're not. In fact, in America, if you're a young black person, you're likely to die in the United States streets more than die in the streets of Kampala. All these issues that Americans are talking comes down to the issue of LGBTP. Period. Issue of the bill that we passed and the homosexual bill that passed, that is the issue here.
Honorable, come on.
Now, listen. They are, this LGBTQ plus, whatever they call themselves, are strategically placed in the United States government, in the State Department, in the White House, in the Senate, and so on and so forth. They are strategically placed to ensure that their agenda is seen through. Another thing is, we are going to elections. Biden needs votes from this group of people. and they will ask Biden in the next elections, what did you do to protect the interests of LGBTQs and homosexuals?
You know, I think that is a mistake.
Listen, that you are still continuing to trade with Uganda.
You know, the mistake I see here is that you, as the government of Uganda, you are trying to simplify this issue to LGBTQs, but these people are saying that, okay, the call from the call from US, the call is from US is saying that work on the human rights record. I know, for example, issues of abductions, issues of missing people are being taken away incommunicado more than 2 years without even being brought to court. This is something that should be also of concern to you.
My brother, we as this government came in place on the principles of NRM government came in place in January 1986 on the very basis of protecting and ensuring that human rights is respected. It's the cornerstone of our democracy. We work day and night to ensure that democracy is respected. However, you can never be 100% in terms of issues of human rights. You can never. Including the same United States have never been 100% in terms of human rights. But the United States have chosen upon themselves to be the policemen and the policewomen, okay, around the world on issues of human rights. I could spend time with you, and I'd like you to give me another opportunity to sit with you here, and we go through the issues of United States human rights abuses, and you'll be shocked at the level of the issue of human rights abuse by the United States of America. But we are not the policemen. We don't want to be the policemen or policewomen of the world, but they have used it, and they use it as a tool to suppress and oppress other vulnerable countries that they feel they can do it because they're a superpower in the world.
I know the U.S. mission in Uganda, they are following this conversation here on Morning at NTV. We have a new ambassador, U.S. ambassador, William Pope. Will you engage this ambassador?
I don't know. Well, Madame Susan is in
Susan
Mwezi. She is gone to South Africa to attend the summit, AGOA summit. She'll have an opportunity with our diplomats, an opportunity to discuss this matter with them. But I don't think it will result in much. So our strategy now is not to beg, is not to give
more support.
Our position now is to ensure, as I said, this is a wake-up call for us. Our strategy now is to ensure that we work in other sectors. That gets us foreign exchange earnings. That we are good at in exporting in the region and the world. And ensure we step up on those areas, and only then will we, only then will be independent of such threats and intimidations.
We still have a window of the Constitutional Court, which is hearing this Anti-Homosexuality Act that was, of course, signed by the President. Will you still use this window to see how you negotiate the relationship? Because you still need the support from the U.S.
Listen, it is in court. As I said, it is in court. We will continue our normal engagement with the United States government. I will engage the ambassador on a regular basis. But one thing I should make it very clear, we are not going to stoop low and bend our knees to beg on these particular issues. That law was passed in the Parliament of Uganda, voted by members of Parliament of Uganda, on the very principles of democracy that the United States government always lectures us and lectures the world. Listen, that is very important. The vote was achieved through democratic principles in the Parliament of Uganda, by parliamentarians of Uganda, expressing the views of the people at the grassroots level.
Okay, finally, Honorable.
What else do you want if you want to talk about democracy?
Finally, Honorable, we need to go back to studio for the rest of the team that is inside the studio. But one thing, there is, of course, Angelo Izama. There is...
Izama, I trust him.
You trust him?
Well.
There is also Honorable Mwadanku Nyingi, but also Joseph Ocheno.
My friend, the Shadow Minister.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. But also, one thing I wanted to speak to you before I go back to studio is the issue of EAC, East Africa integration. We know we have a market, but still we have issues with Kenya. The other day you saw the President of Kenya, Ruto, saying that there should be a limit on the importation of wheat and maize, but also with South Sudan, the market is not so stable. We know we are also looking to DRC, but still, as ESC, we are even failing to protect our own market as the integration market, and we are also trying to create more barriers within the West?
That is true. I think there's much more to be done with the Eastern community. I think that the market is enormous. The market is available for everybody. But I think those who spend a lot of resources protecting their market and protecting the industries will result to eventual failures. You see, the moment you start protecting your industries and not allowing them to be competitive, in order to be more efficient, in order to be more productive, they become lazy. They become lazy. They said government is now on our back, serving us. Why should we invest more, and why should we make more effort? So it backfires.
Finally, your last word.
Finally, I would like to assure Ugandans that they should continue along their normal businesses. The economy is strong and firm. The government is secure, and in spite of the small attacks, the unfortunate attacks by the ADF on our tourists recently, that matter will be addressed. Overall, our security is very good. The issue that Ugandans should watch carefully is that the government of Uganda works around the clock to improve on their welfare and ensure that domestic income and individual incomes are improved. The US dollar is stable today and better today than it was yesterday when the United States removed AGOA. So that speaks for itself.
All right. Thank you, Ladit. Honorable Henry Okello-Oryem, Minister of State for International Relations in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now let me hand you back to the safe hands of Chris Igenyi, who is seated with Angelo Izama, Joseph Ocheno, and Mwada Nkunyinji. Back to you, Chris.
All right, thank you very much, Stephen Mbide there, interviewing the State Minister for International Relations, Okello-Oryem. Very strong statements there, of course, in reaction to the decision by the United States to delist Uganda on account of failure to meet some of the key aspects as stated in the framework of AGOA. The Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs is with us. Your counterpart has been speaking. What's your reaction? Are you friends?
First of all, Honorable Okello-Oryem should not address matters of international relations as if Uganda is his own. Uganda belongs to the people of Uganda. Those are his opinions, and I doubt that they can't represent the values and aspirations of the people of Uganda. And I don't think Honorable Oryem has even understood the AGOA Act. And I want to answer him jointly with my colleague of UPC. When we talk about the U.S. concerns as of now, we must be alive to the fact that from inception of the AGOA Act, they looked at countries which have registerable commitment to most of these. And when we talk about human rights, it's not an innovation now. It actually exists within the terms and conditions or preconditions within the AGOA Act. When we talk about economic rights, rule of law, political pluralism, it is embedded within the AGOA Act. You can't have any legitimacy whatsoever to narrate the concerns of the U.S. In consideration of the suspension of Uganda as if it is a new innovation, and Okello-Oryem appears not to even have read and understood the contents of the AGOA Act and preconditions, both prior and as of now. When we are speaking in terms of our foreign policy, you must distinguish it from personal ego and emotions, as I saw in the demeanor of the Right Honorable Okello-Oryem, or Honorable, whatever. But I know he has a military background, and he thinks himself and Mr. Museveni are the country called Uganda. But when it comes to AGOA Act and our US-Uganda relations, we are looking at now values and aspirations of the people of Uganda vis-a-vis the people of America. And equally, and that's why I mentioned prior, that the Minister of Foreign Affairs would have guided other user departments within our government in terms of our foreign relations, the interests and multilateral values and bilateral values as we participate in international forums and engagements. When we speak about trade volumes, Uganda benefits a lot. I don't think Honorable William is a farmer and is failing even to represent.
He's a businessman.
I don't know, even he's just a soldier, that's what I know. He has a military background and was given a position to sit in foreign office.
No.
And his senior minister is also a general. So the foreign ministry has now been embodied into a camp of soldiers, and that also speaks to governance. We don't have diplomats. Also, when you look at most of our diplomats, majority of them are political appointees. You must listen to these bitter facts. Most of our diplomats and ambassadors are political appointees. We don't have career diplomats. These are matters of diplomacy and engagements. We must look into what is the U.S. raising, how can we engage it, and why should we just remind Okello to even start interacting with the U.S. ambassador as he is committing after an interview of NTV. He would have started long ago, but we have lost it long ago. We don't have
the ambassador is new.
No. The ambassador of U.S. being new does not speak to the fact the embassy has been there, and in terms of all this, the prior conditions to all this has been happening. Now, responding specifically in terms of our benefits as a country, for us as opposition, we still insist we need good relations with the United States of America, and we need to come to amicable terms. We need to understand what the U.S. is raising, but fortunately what the U.S. is raising is embodied within the AGOA Act, that we must continue with the commitment to observe political pluralism. It's part of the
Can I ask you this question?
Human rights, among others. And as we speak now, I told you I'm here. Smart address, not going to Parliament. I was going to join our party president and other delegates to open NUP party offices. But as we speak now, our offices have been closed up at Kavule. Where is now the political pluralism? If US comes and speaks about Uganda failing to observe political pluralism and suspending us from AGOA, I think it will be right. Because these are the preconditions within the AGOA Act. And when I see Oriel speaking as if he's not alive to the fact that within Uganda we have challenges of human rights, challenges of democracy, and most of these challenges, I would expect a minister to speak about Uganda's commitment in trying to respond and rectify what has gone wrong.
I do understand your concerns about the minister's demeanor and what you say is ego, but let me ask you this question, and for now you might be comfortable taking on the form of the spokesperson for the National Unity Platform. Do you think we should completely disassociate from any proceedings with us in as far as the Anti-Homosexuality Act is concerned, so that the United States can be happy?
I'm not the spokesperson of the party as you allege. But I'm a member of the party.
You can speak for the party.
And for us as opposition and as NUP, we've been assertive that we want respect for all rights. And all human rights as Ugandans. And that's why we have been asserting of also our own challenges. That first of all, we need the political space. We need political freedoms. We need rights of Ugandans to be respected. In Parliament, we are in protest demanding for respect and observance of the same rights, the human rights in this country. So when we talk about human rights, it's a broader area. And we can have more and meaningful engagements with the countries of the world. It doesn't matter whether you have a variance in your understanding of rights, but it does not stop the door of engagements and trying to be understood by all countries of the world. This is what is failing in terms of Uganda. But as well, even the minimum observance of known rights is not happening. If we are also protesting out of Parliament because of the kidnapped Ugandans, missing persons, would you expect us to join this regime in defending it at any angle?
All right,
so we are equally victims, and anyone who speaks about rights is equally speaking out in terms of equal our rights, because we are equally oppressed.
That's right.
And we are demanding for a comprehensive approach on human rights. Let's have observance. Otherwise, we don't see the commitment, we don't see the engagement, and for us it is a calling for us as people as well to act. But as I want to put on record that Okello Oryem does not speak for the people of Uganda. He actually spoke for himself and maybe Mr. Museveni.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Angelo Izama, the minister who was very unequivocal in saying that we now have an opportunity to rethink our approach to things, and that Uganda is not going to go on its knees and beg the United States. Instead, we have to realign our own priorities and strategies for trade, especially on the international stage, so that we can ensure that foreign currency continues to come in. You agree with him?
Well, like I said before, you know, Ugandans are here to stay. It's going to be a very long journey. You know, in another 20 years, we're going to be 100 million people. The conditions for engagement won't be the same. But I think current and future leaders, the most important thing is that they have Ugandan national interests at heart. I think that's what the ordinary citizen would have in mind. And you know, from what my colleagues are saying and from what I can observe, there is actually internally here in Uganda at all times major debates on what direction to take, what ideas to incorporate, whether it is from the National Unity Party or their colleagues in the national government. Look, on this question of AGOA, and since you invited me here purely as a member of the Investment Authority, look, we have, as you've seen, this year and last year, we have been very aggressive trying to build bridges in markets around the world. Regionally here, we held, I think, summits with Somalia. We plan one with Kenya. Okay. We are alive to the fact that Uganda's growing economy, particularly in agro-processing, manufacturing, needs an outlet. And our argument has always been that, look, if you invest in Uganda, you have got access to the regional market, you have got access to the continental market. Uganda continues to be an ideal place to invest. Of course, that comes with it comes with I think the challenge for Honorable Oriem and others is that they're dealing with other dynamics. There's just geopolitical dynamics which have an impact. Okay. And to the extent that, you know, they have their own strategies to commit Uganda in ways that are consistent with our long-term interests, I leave that to them. For the United States, that relationship, like I said, has not been uniform. It goes up because it goes down.
There's always fluctuation.
And, you know, recently we were speaking with members of the American Chamber of Commerce here, and what we told them is, look, if you're an American company doing business in Uganda, you're welcome. Encourage other American enterprises to come and work here. The job of the authorities is to promote your businesses and make sure that your investments are safe. Uganda is still a good place to invest. As a matter of fact, when you think about it in terms of trends, and this is something maybe for my colleagues here to pay attention to. The areas where the United States and China and the European Union are interested in today is in new and emerging sectors like critical minerals. Okay? These minerals that are going to be essential for the next generation of industrialization. We are seeing a lot of interest in Uganda from US companies. US tech companies, US mining companies to come and invest here. This AGOA drama aside, okay, there is actually opportunities for Uganda to continue to work and to engage US investment. And I'm here just to say that, look, our policy is all investors are welcome, and US investors included, despite the geopolitical issues that are in play, are welcome to invest here, and those investments will yield a profit.
All right, Joseph Otieno, the issue is business soaked in politics.
Well,
yeah, and politics is the game in town.
And it's a game in town, no doubt about it. What's the way forward? Efforts to, for example, the minister spoke about the fact that Mrs. Muhwezi is in South Africa at the 23rd AGOA Forum and is expected to speak to stakeholders there to ensure that the Washington reverses this particular decision. I do not know how much leverage she has on that, on whether she's actually the office that ought to push for this particular reversal. I don't know whether it will happen that way. But going forward, the minister has been very dismissive. In other words, it's done and dusted. We don't have to go down on our knees to beg. So Uganda is going to go on to another trajectory. Do you see that working pretty well?
Do you know, I have a relative disadvantage in a way, but the substantial advantage that I happen to have known Henry, actually. Henry was ahead of me in Mwiri, so Henry's a Mwiri OB. Oh. And he was a fine son of General Tito Okello, and we looked up to him. I must put a disclaimer that Henry's a very decent guy, by the way. Okay. But he's certainly not a soldier, but he's a son of
that's the military background.
Yes, and he doesn't have. And by the way,
being a soldier's son,
Henry must minus. Let me just minus his association with Museveni. Is a very decent guy.
What?
But yeah, you know, he's a very decent guy. But when you then become a spokesperson of NRA and a spokesperson of Mr. Museveni, and to push for these defensive interests, it becomes very difficult. I'm a little disappointed though about his dismissiveness. I also note on your sister publication, Monitor's publication, my other young friend, you know, I met Chris Barumas the first time at the Monitor, one of the programs I think you were producing that show. And we were very decent friends around those other time when he was extremely concerned about the lives of Nebanda the past, meaning Nebanda the late. And so I find these two young brethren of mine being rather dismissive. Granted, Chris's submissions to the Monitor publications about blackmail, you know, brings at the top the question of homosexuality. But I think, you know, human rights abuse in Uganda is not about homosexuality only. And I think my colleague maybe was saying too many things at the same time. You know, it is very broad about, and I had this conversation with another network the other day, the fact that opposition leaders are whisked off an aircraft, you know, into their homes using my fuel. You know, that people are missing in spaces. Female legislators, I whipped. In parliamentary institutions, Water Avenue, kind of stuff. You know, those to me are the issues. But quickly, I would have expected, as in terms of way forward, I would have expected Henry to say that, look, you know, some of the issues that Angelo quite rightly raised, that okay, we've got hit by this. Which are the companies, you know, that are affected? Which aspects of these industries? How the employers and employees involved are going to be affected? How then, as government, can we cushion to make sure that they don't get the shocks that are likely to come out of this? That to me is a responsible alternative, responsible response from government. Before then going to say that, like, we're going to look at alternative ways, you know, by which we're able to mitigate many of these things. Being dismissive is not true. But quickly again, the idea that NRA came here in the backdrop of promoting human rights must be rejected. 1986, Henry knows better than myself. Henry knows what was happening in his home district in 1986. So it's not that. But I mean, we want to move forward.
All right.
I think just quickly, you know, when some of these issues come, when some of these things come up, it's the responsibility of government and all political leaders, as ourselves, to come push aside emotions and sometimes put aside party politicking games to try and actually talk as a country, to know that actually below these are the ordinary citizens. The vast majority, I think, again, as Angelo referred much earlier, are really people over and above those of us who can even afford taxi fares, let alone motorbike. Right. But those people who can hardly afford a meal, and some of these other industries link directly with the poorest of the poor in this country. And that's one of the reasons why Uganda was actually selected in order to be able to uplift the vast majority of poverty.
Joseph Otieno, seasoned analyst and stalwart of the Uganda People's Congress. Many thanks for the submissions, and many thanks to you too. Angelo Izama, board member at Uganda Investment Authority. Thanks to Mwada Kunyiji, Honorable Member of Parliament and Shadow Foreign Affairs Minister, for the submissions. One thing we can all agree on is that this debate is far more stretched than we can manage to handle in any one particular interface, including Morning at NTV. The politics, the trade, the economics are all standalone, but again, they overlap. So the discussion can always can flip from one side to the other. And I hope that as we continue our coverage of this particular development, our partners in the newsroom will be bringing you comprehensive coverage of what the government is up to in resolving this particular impasse. Stay with us. We shall be speaking about something that is very pertinent. Let me just get it very straight to you. Learning foreign languages. Well, we know English, so we can deal with the Americans, but when it comes to Chinese, how shall we deal with them very effectively? You might learn a language or two. Stay with us. We shall be